occurring shortly. We have 2 special service taxing areas, one of which is West Dempster Street, which we're very proud of, that is ongoing. We have a potential police station renovation going with an architect. So to use the cliche, we had so many irons in the fire with regard to numerous projects. The remainder of the downtown, we have $7 million to borrow in order to implement strategic activities quite apart from the Forest City Illinois Science and Technology Park. So there are just a host of activities that we have going in the village, and believe me, we hurt when we said this to them, but we said, can you please go and find another location to solve this financing, knowing that they could do this with other governments. And so it was strictly a matter of having a great deal of activity on our plates at the village of Skokie. Otherwise, we would have proudly participated, as we have done on numerous other matters with the Holocaust Foundation. We're proud to have them in our community. And I would add to what the rest of the speakers have indicated, that while they're in our community, they're on the border of our community, and we truly view them to be a regional, if not a statewide activity. So I think the children and the citizens of Morton Grove and Glenview and Wilmette and Evanston and all the other communities that surround us and beyond are going to share in this resource. So working with Commissioner Sufferton, former Commissioner Sutker, now retired President Stroger. There have just been a host of people who have contributed hours and sweat and toil on this project, and proud to have done so. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that any of you would have.
Trustee Stackman?
May be corrected, but in the newspaper, Mayor Van Duzen alluded to the fact that we didn't ever do this. We turned other people down before, and we just didn't want to kind of start doing this kind of financing.
Well, we've never, I don't want to unquote Mayor Van Duzen, but we had never been approached on such an issuance in the past. We're familiar with such an issuance because Deerfield, for example, has done one recently. There was some discussion of it's unprecedented because, in fact, we had never done one in the past. But again, it would have been just I wouldn't call it routine, but we've done a lot of financing deals with Old Orchard, and we've done a lot of sophisticated deals. So it didn't frighten us, and it didn't discourage us. There was simply, as I say, a lot of activities going on in the village, and that was truthfully the biggest consideration. Would it have been unprecedented? Yes, we have not issued anything like this for a nonprofit in the past.
I thought that was one of the primary reasons why he said that they didn't want to do it.
It may have been one of the reasons that the mayor had in mind, but again, I think I've indicated to you the primary reason. And I could have gone on with some other projects, but I didn't want to belabor the point. Simply lots of economic development and other projects going on. And your attorney can advise you what bank qualified debt means. It affects your interest rate when you issue more than $10 million. That was one of our considerations because we had other debt issuances going on. So there were a whole host of reasons, financial and other activities. That, trustee, was truly the primary consideration. This other consideration was one of them, but not anywhere near the top of the list. And I invite you to call Mayor Van Duzen, obviously at your leisure. I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with you about it.
Okay.
Can I just clarify one thing? What Mr. Rigoni was referring to by having so many other potential pending projects, and Janet can correct me if I don't get it exactly right, but if you were only going to be issuing bonds on behalf of 501c3s like ourselves, there is no dollar cap. But if you're going to be issuing bonds for yourself, in 1 year there's a limit of $10 million of bank qualified bonds, and if Skokie were to have issued these bonds for us it would have precluded them from issuing even $1 of additional bonds during the same period that were bank qualified. Is that right, Janet? So the relevance of Skokie having so many irons in the fire was that they didn't want to take a chance that our bond deal would have foreclosed the option for them of issuing bank qualified bonds. Is that just to clarify the relationship between their transactions and ours?
Okay. Trustee DiMaria has a question.
Actually, for Howard, if you could stay up at the podium, please. Earlier, you mentioned the surrounding communities, and I think you said a 10-mile radius. Is that correct?
Yes.
One of the questions I have, and I think I know the answer, but for the people here tonight, were we the only village approached? I know you said we were the first village approached, but were we the only village approached? And did you, for example, talk to Evanston or Glenview and ask them if they would contribute at all through their bond?
You were the
Bonding?
first and only village approached.
Thank you.
Any other trustees have any questions? Thanks, Al. And that's a very good policy not to unquote the mayor, Al, by the way.
We're talking more about money, so I'm on point here. I wanted to introduce another part of the team. LaSalle Bank, I mentioned, and two other banks are providing the letter of credit. The underwriters are the people who actually sell the bonds in the financial markets. We have an unusual situation. I'd like to introduce Frank Paul to you from KeyBank Capital Markets. This is a Cleveland-based $90 billion bank. Frank is the lead underwriter in this deal and would just like to give you some information to put this in complete context.
Thank you very much, Howard. I wanted to add to that a little bit to the question that you asked. We did research other surrounding communities, and Morton Grove is a community that has not issued debt this year, so has the ability. The other communities have issued debt already on a bank qualified basis.
Thank
So that's the reason we didn't not go to other communities, and that we're here today. And I think the thing that I can add just very briefly, the professional team that you've put together in terms of protecting the village's interests, Chapman & Cutler serving as bond counsel, the largest bond counsel in the state, Kat Muchin being right up there with them in terms of making sure that the village's interests are protected and the financial and reputational interests are protected. So these are very common bonds. They are issued. I know of no issue that has ever had a problem with a LaSalle Bank letter of credit. Certainly, there has never been a problem, to my knowledge, with any issue that we've been associated with or that I've been associated with. So it's a very, particularly with a AA rated bank, it's a very, very safe transaction from a financial standpoint, and they will get the lowest rates that are available in the capital markets today, which are in the 3.5 range or so currently. So, and Howard did want me to mention, and I'm very proud to mention the commitment of the team members, and I will add my own personal commitment to the video that you saw and to Sam Harris's comments. My father was one of the first Americans into Buchenwald. He was in the medical corps, and I'm very happy to be part of this team, and I'm very happy to have some of his mementos that he brought back will be in the new museum. So,
Thank you. Any question? Go ahead, Howard.
We're almost finished. I don't want to take too much time. I just want to make sure that since this is a first time for you, that you have all the information relevant. I want to briefly introduce Howard Ackerman from Fifth Third Bank, which is one of the bank consortium. And also, you've heard Chapman and Cutler mention Matt Lewin. Matt, is there anything you need to add? You've heard the discussion. Is there something that you'd like to add right now?
I think Janet and everyone has done a fabulous job.
I did want to give an opportunity, coming full circle for Commissioner Suffredin, because I just have to tell you the anecdote that when Mayor Van Duzen told us that we should try to build the museum on the site that we currently have now, the problem was that the amount of land that we could afford wasn't enough to accommodate the building and the on-site parking. And I came to speak to Larry, who was then a candidate, I think, or a would-be candidate, possible, in the wings for the county commission. And he had an idea about using the forest preserve land. And now we come 4 or 5 years later, and I meet Mayor Creer standing at the side of Larry Sufferdon. So Larry, would you just like to address this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. This project and the issuance of these bonds, which Cook County does on a fairly regular basis, so I'm very familiar with them, and we probably would have done them in this situation if we weren't in the year of 3 presidents, which has been a problem. And as many of you know, the problem started in March with the stroke for President Stroger, and then not having a president functioning until August 1st, and then the short period that President Steele was there, and now that the 10 days that President Todd Stroger has been in office, and the needs of the museum and going forward during that period of time when we just couldn't have put this together for them. But I want to encourage you to do this because I think this is a remarkable cooperation between a variety of different governments on a regional basis. And I think for your town that this is a phenomenal opportunity, because for those coming from the south up the Edens Expressway, they're going to get off at Dempster to get to this museum, which will be a major national attraction and will bring thousands of people into this regional area. And Morton Grove is going to be the entrance to that museum, getting off the Edens at Dempster and coming into your community. I believe that there is going to be, for your community, many, many financial benefits. As someone who has in his professional career represented museums, and I represent the 10 museums that are on Chicago Park District land, including the Art Institute, the Museum of Science and Industry, and the Field, I see every day the financial impact on tourism that those museums bring to the city of Chicago and to this region. This museum, which will be a spiritual place as well as a place of education, is going to have that kind of an impact on this region. The statutory basis you're being asked to issue these bonds under was set up to give this kind of a boost where the opportunity was there for a community to use the statutory cap that they had. I think that what you're doing here does not put your village in any jeopardy. You've heard from the lawyers who know a lot more about bonds than I do. But what it does is it puts your community on a solid moral footing that will help it in the future have a solid financial return through the normal taxes and the normal interactions that people will have with your government. So I encourage you to join with us. Cook County sold to the village of Skokie the land, and this museum will be on Skokie land so that it becomes a public museum under Illinois law, which will make it available to additional grants from the state of Illinois. The parking area, as was said, will be in the forest preserve. What this does, this takes the Harms Flatwood part of our forest preserve. That's the area east of Harms and north of Gulf, and we'll bring more people into that area. We'll be upgrading the trails that are in there. We're going to make this more accessible for those who have their horses in the stables. I think this Holocaust Museum is going to use our forest preserve to help educate people to what many of the people who survived the Holocaust had to go through, and living in the woods and living off the earth that God had given us. So I really strongly, I came here when Howard asked me to just strongly encourage you to do it, and I thank you for considering using your cap to help this institution. And I'll answer any questions if you'd have them.
Any trustees have any questions?
Thank you.
Larry, thanks very much. And as you've been a great friend of this village, as everybody sitting up here has been aware of and appreciate your support.
Just want to give an opportunity for someone who is a resident of your village, who has been one of our stalwarts, who has come to our committee meetings as a volunteer, Loretta Burke, the president of the North Shore Community Bank. Loretta, did you want to say anything at this time?
You look so surprised, Loretta.
The only thing I want to say is, as a resident of Morton Grove and as a member of the Museum and Education Committee of the Holocaust Museum, I, as a Morton Grove resident, would
let me just address one other aspect of it, and that is timing. The observation's been made, why don't we just raise our money, and we don't really need to borrow, because if we had all the money, we could build the museum without going into the debt. It could take us years to do it. You saw on Bill Curtis's video Lisa Derman, who passed away several years ago. Since the video was made, I've attended the funerals of 3 of our board members. Those of us who are younger are acutely aware of the passing of time. And we really feel a commitment that we've made to our fellow organization members, some of whom, frankly, we have some are 90 years old, that we would do our darndest to let them see before they leave the earth the evidence that there's going to be a way to carry on this story. So that's why we're so driven by speed to try to get this put together. And that concludes our formal presentation. We reserve the right to answer any questions you have now or afterward, later.
Well, let's wait and see, Howard.
Okay.
Does anybody else from the audience like to come up and speak in favor or against? Mr. Thill.
Good evening. My name is John Thill. I want to clear the air on one thing that I said Monday night. My comment was, I feel that all the surrounding communities should be bonding a portion of this bond. And the Bugle stated that I said, why are they all picking on Morton Grove? I never said that. My statement was, why are they coming to Morton Grove when there are surrounding communities? And I think that was kind of explained tonight. I had another concern, and my concern was, if I had a child that was in grade school, I wouldn't want him to go into a museum like that. But that was also explained to me. You have a cap on 12 years old, and that was something that I think should be put out there. Not just saying we're bringing school children. We were bringing school children over the age of 12. That is very understandable. And here is the champion. And this saddens me. And what this saddens me is we had 2 issues Monday night. We had a horse trail and we had the museum. The horse trail's in here. The museum is not. And the reason this saddens me is because I feel there's a lot of people in Morton Grove that don't understand what this is. I heard a gentleman when I was sitting back there saying, I can't afford a raise in taxes. I had another gentleman call me and ask me, why are we loaning the museum $30 million? So I had to explain it to him. So I think that education is the main thing, and you folks are aware of it. You put a good package together. And I think it's really, really neat. The only thing that I would ask the board is, this is a precedent. And Dan, I agree with your question, will you pay for the office staff? And you said yes. And the reason that's important is if we're setting a precedent, let's set the right precedent. Any other 501c that comes to Morton Grove has to play by the same rules that you folks are playing by. And those are precedents we're setting. And I would ask one more thing. If we're going to set this precedent, let's ask one more thing of the museum, and that is, would you carry a bond to cover the village in case we do have a situation where another 501c comes through and you, other board, deny it, and they take it to court? We still have to have a lawyer to defend the village. So I don't think it's asking too much to ask the museum to carry a bond to protect us through the life of the bond. So I don't understand this stuff. I'm a house painter, but I had at least 3 days to think about it. And those are questions that came to me while I'm painting a wall. So, you know.
Did you have the windows open or closed?
I was using latex paint,
Okay.
and I wasn't high. And I want to let you know I am for the museum, and I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't know about the economical value for Morton Grove because we have no hotels. We have no fine dining. And whatever other situations that you think we're going to gain by this. But anyway, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, John. And I can tell you, Commissioner Sufferton and I both are amazed that the paper had something wrong on there, because that's never happened to us. So, Mr. You got somebody else? Sure, you got to take.